you doing, Met fans? And welcome to another edition of the Terry Collins Show. I'm John Arezzi. We're back for another great week here at the show. We want to thank you, first of all, for all the great response, the views on YouTube, the downloads on all the podcast platforms, all the wonderful interaction on social media. And it all leads back to the man the show's named after. Let's bring on former Mets skipper, current analyst for Baseball Night in New York, Terry Collins. Terry, how you doing?
I'm going great, John. Good to be back. Good to have another show, and looking forward to our show today.
Yeah, we got a great show today. Very special guest, Terry. You got a true legend in Mets history on with us this week. 45 years and running, working for the Mets organization, Jay Horwitz.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have Jay on. You know, when you and I talked about doing this podcast, the first guy I called was Jay Horwitz. I said, listen, I know you do podcasts. Tell me about it. You know, is it something I should look into? Should I not? And he, as he always is, gives me the greatest advice. You know, he's been a great friend. And I will tell you, John, which I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk to Jay, I mean, how this guy helped me when I first got to New York. And, you know, I had managed in a long time in the major leagues. And coming to a city like New York and having this man sit me down and explain to me what the process about dealing with the media in New York, because it's huge and it's a big part of managing in New York. And no, I couldn't have had a better mentor than this man.
Well, we look forward to Jay coming on, and that's coming up shortly here. But before we do get to Jay, Terry, let's lead it off by talking about the Mets series against the Braves. The Mets won 2 of 3. There was a rain out there in between, but they won the opener 8-7. They dropped the second game 6-5, but they showed life at the end of that game. They didn't give up. They showed a lot of heart. And then the rout of Atlanta 16-4 in the finale. Overall, a big series win for the Mets.
Yeah, you know, I know they started out 0-5, and of course, you know, as we know in New York, the sky's falling when you're 0-5. But you know, it's a huge marathon, and we knew their lineup was too good not to start hitting. And I think, you know, again, as they start getting used to playing every day, and you know, the weather's going to get a little nicer, the offense is going to pick up. You know, the 16-4 game. Hey, look, the Braves showed you the importance of having quality starting pitching. You're talking about a team that's lost, you know, maybe arguably one of the best pitchers, if not the best pitcher in the National League, in Spencer Strider. And then you've got Max Fried, who's another outstanding pitcher who has not pitched very well yet. So they're riding 40-year-old Charlie Morton as their ace in Atlanta. So, you know, this is when there are certain times when you play a team. Hey, look, you got to take advantage. Nobody feels sorry for you in the big leagues. So when you're hurt or you're banged up, this is when you beat teams. And you know, and we all know it's going to happen at some time, you know, this season to all the teams. There's going to be some key injuries here and there, and that's when you're going in there. Believe me, you know, there was a couple of years where I go back to 2017. You know, we lost all 5 of my guys in our rotation at some time that summer, and when you know what, the other teams they feasted on us at times, and so. I think the Mets, obviously, when they start getting that offense going, because they really do have a really good lineup, you know, and it's going to help that starting pitching, because they're going to have some, you know, runs to work with on the board, and that's a big plus to a ball club.
Yeah, it certainly is. But I think this particular series at this particular time, even though it's early in the season, the Mets have kind of been dominated by the Braves, especially down in Atlanta. I mean, they didn't have a very good record there over the last 3 or 4 years. So does this kind of send a message to not only the Braves and the rest of the National League East, but also the fan base for the Mets? A message that this team has a lot of heart.
Oh, totally.
I mean, we're not afraid of any.
No, the series in Cincinnati. I mean, Cincinnati's got one of the best young teams in all of baseball, and you know they go in there and they win the series in Cincinnati, and then you go to Atlanta, and you know, and they get off and they win the tough first game, but they score runs. They come back in game 2. You know, obviously they have the rainout, but it sent a message through all of baseball that hey, all the talk before the season that the New York Mets have a playoff caliber team. They're showing the team, hey, there's some truth to that. And now it's all about making sure you stay consistent, stay healthy, do the things that you do well on a daily basis. You know, they've had a little bit of a shakeup in their bullpen a little bit. But one thing, all they got to do is figure out how to get to that ninth inning, because that guy in the ninth inning is maybe the best in the game. And so when you get that lead and you can get the ball to Edwin Diaz in the ninth, you're going to win some games.
Yeah, I mean, Diaz, it's so great to have him back, first of all. But let's talk about some of the surprises early on here. I've noticed really an emergence of Brett Beatty. Surprising performance from him. I mean, he just seems like he's walking with a little bit of a swagger. He's made some great defensive plays in the field. He's hitting, clutch hitting. Talk to us about Brett Beatty and what you've seen, the difference from that last year to this year.
Well, I was managing or I guess I had just stepped down the year after when we drafted Brett, and you saw a tremendous athlete. And you know what? In the big leagues, it's all about confidence. It's all about having confidence in your ability, knowing you're good enough. And whoever got to him, who's ever told him, hey, look, you're a major league player. You're the, as he said before, you're the top 30 third baseman in the entire world. So believe in yourself, trust yourself. You know what? You've got skills, and there's going to be good nights and there's going to be bad nights. Last year, we had a tough year. And John, you and I have talked about this. I've told you there are two kind of players in the big leagues. There are the ones who've been humbled, and they're the ones who will be humbled. And Brett Beatty last year got humbled, and he learned from it. And that's what makes good players. You can go back to any player that's ever played. I had big conversations one time with Tony Gwynn. He said, Terry, I've been 0 for 15. I've had slumps in my life, not very many, but you know what? You learn from it. And that's where Brett, all of a sudden, he's learning from it. He believes in himself. He's gotten so much better defensively. I'm very, very excited to see what he's done there, because I'm a big believer in defense. And especially, whether you have really good pitching or defense can save some of that mediocre pitching by making plays behind guys. And I think with the way Brett's played offensively has really helped him defensively. Sometimes it works out the other way. So whether, hey, you're having a bad time at the plate and you go out and you make a couple errors because your thought process is worrying about what you're doing at the plate. Well, it's working the other way now. This guy's contributing offensively, and he's going out and he's saying, hey, look, I can, on both sides of the ball, I can help this ball club.
Yeah, and the guy that really worked closely with him in the offseason was Francisco Lindor.
Can't have a better guy. Can't have a better guy in your corner than one of the best shortstops in the game. I mean, and again, you're talking about, now that's one thing with Lindor, we've seen and recently there's been some crazy people that have given him some negative press. He hasn't changed. Same guy. He doesn't get down. He doesn't get too high. Doesn't get too low. He just, hey, look, he knows it's a tough sport. I've said for a long time, John, if the game was easy, we'd be watching everybody else play. It's very, very hard, and you've got to be mentally tough, and you've got to be mentally sane, safe on a daily basis. You can't get down when you're 0 for 4. You strike out with the bases loaded in the game. It's part of it. The greatest players in the game have all done it. And when you can recover from, a negative and turn it into a good streak, where you get hot all of a sudden, it makes you a better player. And I think we've seen some of our young players with the Mets are starting to do that. Brett's done it. We saw last year Alvarez have some really good streaks and some really bad streaks. But for me, I mean, you're looking at now in this lineup, these guys are hitting in the middle of the lineup. And so it just shows you how much they've grown and how much being able to deal with failure, learning how to deal with failure is helping these guys be better players.
Yeah, Lindor certainly had smiles on his faces, even though he's in a slump right now. He'll come out of it. There's plenty of hits in that bat this year. So just to see him stay up, stay confident, pat the guys on the back, be a cheerleader in the dugout. He's become one of my favorite players, Lindor has, and I just can't wait to see how the rest of the season unfolds with him. And it starts off at Citi Field this weekend. The Mets have won 2 series in a row now. They head home for the series, but the big thing is not who they're playing. They're playing the Royals. Okay, they're playing the Pirates. But this weekend, the retirement of number 16, Doc Gooden. What a huge tribute to Doc. How big is that for Doc, Terry, and the Mets fans? And give us your personal recollections of your relationship with Doc Gooden.
Well, to start out with, I think it's a tremendous honor for Doc. Tremendous honor. I've been around Doc a long time. I knew him when he was, I think when he first left the Mets, and I lived in St. Pete, and we used to work out together, and we became very good friends. And I'm aware of his struggles, and so is he. And you know what? He has been recently, he stood up and been accountable for him. And yet thank the fans for always being in his corner. They know, sometimes these things are tough to beat. Well, Doc's got a lot of support, and I think what Steve and Alex Cohen are doing to retire his number, Daryl's number, is just wonderful. It's wonderful. You know what that does to a guy? It takes your self-confidence, your self-worth, and makes you feel better about yourself. And I think it's going to be something that's really going to help Doc continue his battle, his off the field battle that he goes through, that he has, because he is a tremendous human being. And what he's doing off the field with talking to kids about drug issues, going to schools, Daryl, same thing. I mean, it's a huge impact, and I think it's only going to make the Mets a better organization, having those kind of guys. But I will tell you, when I first got to the major leagues as a coach, I had not seen Major League Baseball because I was so busy with your own minor league teams for years. I never saw Doc back in those early years because I had my own teams I had to run. When I got to the big leagues as a coach with the Pirates, we went in to play the Mets, and this was in 1992. We were pretty good. I might even been 1990. We were pretty good, and we went in to play the Mets. And the first night, David Cohn pitched and struck out 13 or 14. And I had seen David Cohn in the minor leagues coming up in the minor leagues, so I knew he had good stuff. And so I went in Jim Leland's office when the game was over, and I said, "That David Cohn's got good stuff." And Jim looked at me and he said, "Do you think he's got good stuff? Wait till tomorrow night when you see when Doc Gooden's pitching. That is great stuff." And sure enough, Doc punched out 16 of us. I mean, he ate Bonds up, and Barry, of course, was the MVP that one of those years. So, I mean, that just tells you how great he was. And you look at it, even when he started on the downside, the guy pitches a perfect game with the Yankees, or no hitter with the Yankees. I mean, the talent, the ability to go out there and keep yourself in the game, never get too carried away. Doc's, I'm so happy for him. I'm very, very excited to see him get his number retired, and I'm great. I know there's a lot of his teammates are coming up for it. And again, another great tribute to who he is. When all of these guys, all of his buddies from 1986, they all know about what's happened off the field, but they're here to support Doc, and I think that's going to send a big message to Doc.
Well, we all congratulate Doc Gooden, and we congratulate the Mets organization for honoring Doc Gooden. What a special moment in Mets history. Well, Terry, that'll wrap up this segment. Now we're going to get to your buddy and a very special Talking with TC. We're going to bring on Jay Horwitz. Now it's time for a very special Talkin' with TC. Since 1980, our Talkin' with TC guest has been affiliated with the New York Mets as the head of the Mets Media Relations Department for nearly 4 decades, and now Vice President of Alumni Relations and the club historian for the Amazons. Our guest is a 2019 recipient of the annual William J. Slocum Jack Lang Award for his service to the game of baseball, and that was awarded by the Baseball Writers Association of America. He probably has more stories than anyone in Mets history, so it's our pleasure to bring on Jay Horwitz.
Thanks for having me. Always good to be reunited with my friend, Mr. Collins.
Hi, Jay, and listen, thanks for coming on the podcast. And
it's my pleasure, Terry.
We've got a lot of stories to talk about, a lot of things to talk about. So we're excited to get started. Certainly, you meant a lot to me when I first got to New York. You saved me. I mean, you saved me.
Well, I got you fired, though, Terry. Remember that.
Well, you got me started on the right foot with the writers, and that's a huge thing in New York. And without your help, there's no way I would have been able to survive some of the shenanigans those guys do. So I'm really happy to have you on here today. And I think we need to start out. I think one of the great stories, John, about Jay is how when he first got the job. I mean, it's a true story, and if people remember Frank Cashen, the old general manager. So Jay, tell us about your interview to get the job.
So this is the winter of 1980. I had accepted a job as a stat guy for NBC with Joe Garagiola and Tony Kubek. About 3 days after, I get a call from somebody who says, "I'm Jim McGurney from the Mets. I want to offer you a job as being a PR guy with the Mets. Would you want to go to Florida?" I said, "Harold, this is stupid. Don't fool around with me." I found out it really was Jim McGurney from the Mets. I called him back the next day. So I flew down to Florida. As Terry well knows, I don't have a great sense of direction. I went to the wrong hotel in St. Petersburg. I was supposed to go to the Hyatt. I went to the Edgewater Beach. Took a cab over to the Edgewater Beach. I was late for the interview. Frank Cashen, our GM, was sitting there at a table, his little white tennis short. I reached over and said, "Mr. Cashen, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry I'm late." I reached over and knocked over the huge container of orange juice on his lap. I swear to God. And then it got better after that. So he asked me two questions. He said, "Have you read Brosnan yet?" I said, "Who wrote that? Shakespeare?" He said, "No, dummy, that's Jim Brosnan, the former pitcher." The interview lasted about two more minutes. Going back to the plane, and I went to St. Petersburg Airport. I called my mom, my mother, and said, "Mom, there's no way I got this freaking job." At 45 years still later, I don't know how it is. It's not my good looks. I'm still here.
John, and that's just the beginning of it all. That's just,
Yeah, it
that
is.
just breaks the cut. There's so many more that are going to come down the pike here. I just think it's Jay. So Jay, you got a big weekend ahead here. How's things
Yeah,
going?
yeah, great. We're retiring Dwight's number on Sunday. Hopefully we get over 30,000, Terry. The weather hasn't been great, but I've been with Dwight since the beginning, the good and the off the field stuff. You know what? He's really trying to turn his life around. He's working with kids, going to hospitals, goes to schools. And the question I always get with him and Darryl, we retired Darryl's number June 1st, is should he be in a Hall of Fame? Maybe he should be. What both guys are doing now is maybe more important than a record or a plaque. They're turning your life around and making a difference in the community, which to me is tremendous.
Yeah, I mean, I can't agree with you more. I've known Doc for a long time. I lived in St. Petersburg. I wasn't there when you couldn't get around St. Pete, but I used to work out with Doc in the wintertime and became very, very good friends. I mean, this is when he was in great shape. He was just, he basically had gone to the Yankees at that particular time and, worked so hard to get himself ready to keep pitching. And I think he might have even been with Cleveland then. I think he might have been with Cleveland at that time.
That was probably the late
It
90s,
was,
right,
it was.
Terry?
And one of the things I tried to do, when I was managing in Anaheim, we tried to get Doc in a deal with Cleveland. We never got it worked out, but we've been friends forever. And I totally agree. I'm around him a lot right now. And you know what? He's fighting a tremendous battle.
And he's got the heart of gold too, Terry. So does Darryl do. They have the heart of gold. They're good with kids. But, Doc thought he had blown his chance, in the suspensions, the drug stuff and everything. But, our new ownership, the Cones, wants to retire here and Darryl's number. And for him, it's a chance to say a final goodbye to the Mets fans. That's what means a lot to him. He never thought he'd have the opportunity to address the people at Citi Field and say, "Thank you for standing behind me."
Yeah, and again, first class guy. I see him a lot down here. I do a lot of all the fantasy camps, in the fall down here, and he's at every one of them. Goes from guy to guy, sits down, talks to him. Goes, at dinner at night. He goes with different guys out to dinner. He really has, he's really working hard to resurrect,
There's no
the
pretense
image that
about
he
him,
had
Terry.
with the Mets.
He has no pretense about him. He's down to earth guy, and he's a very humble guy. He's a very shy guy actually too. But so I'm looking forward. A lot of the about 67 of the 86 guys are coming back too, and Gary Sheffield's coming back. His nephew. So we should have a good turnout. Hopefully, we get some good weather and get ready to go.
Jay, in those early years when he was up there, did you see anything? Have you ever seen anything like that? What he did on the field?
No, the crazy thing, Terry? He did it all with two pitches. He had a fastball and a curve, which they called Uncle Charlie. Now the guys with 6, 7, 8 pitches. He had two basic pitches. And, Joe McElvain was our director of scouting back then. And he had Joe was a former pitcher who came down to two people, Sam Horn, a former Red Sox, guy supposed to be a 30, 110 guy, or Dwight. And Joe wanted to take a chance on a 17-year-old kid who had gigantic hands. And Joe always told me never how the ball came out of his hands. But he did it with 2 pitches. I mean, who does it with 2 pitches this day and age? You know, the 2 years he had in '84 when he won 17 games, in '85 he was a Cy Young, winning the Triple Crown pitching 24-4 and a 1.53 ERA. It's amazing what he did. Shea was electric, guys. I mean, the 19 pitch, it was a happening. It wasn't a game, it was a happening. We got to go see Doc pitches. It could be no hitters, it could be a 16 strikeout game, and it was a place to be. And that's why I'm really so glad we're able to honor him this way.
Yeah, you know, and I think it's going to be great. I'm all excited for him. You know, I'm not going to be able to get there. I've talked to Doc a couple times about coming up, but I know it's going to be such a mob scene. I know there's a lot of '86 Mets guys coming up, so it's just going to be a wonderful day for him. And you know, I wish him all the best in the world. I can't wait to see him when he finally got this behind him and he can slow down a little bit. John, anything for Jay I mean, you sat with him when we were down here in Florida. So
yeah, absolutely, Jay. Thank you again for coming on. But I want to talk about Doc for a sec. I first saw Doc pitch in '84. I was on the road in the music business at the time, so there was no streaming. I didn't get a chance to really watch the Mets like I used to previously, but I got to see him pitch. I believe it was against the Cubs, and it was late in the season. And it was a national TV game, and I was absolutely blown away. I'd never seen anything like this guy. The fastball, his poise for such a young guy. And then
was that the
'85
game when he got one hit? Was that the game?
Yes, that was a one hitter, and I was like, talk to us about that '84, '85 season. I don't think fans of this era or the past had ever seen 2 consecutive seasons like Doc Gooden had in '84 and '85. It was just phenomenal.
You know, and he just commanded everything, you know, and you got to remember, you know, I don't think his story is ever to be replicated, guy. In '84, he was 19 years old. And in 1985, he was 20. So it was always the first pitcher to do this, first pitcher to do that, first pitcher started All-Star game to get this amount of strikeouts. And you know, the pressure he was under, you know, the previous year in '83, he struck out 300 guys in Lynchburg. So we all knew what was coming, but you know, Davey Johnson had a fight for him to be on a team in '84. Some people wanted to send him back to the minors, and Davey said, no, I want him on the team. So he just had to make up and to do it. I mean, every start was, you didn't know what was going to happen. And, you know, the string of strikeouts and low run games, but the year he had, I think it was, 24-4, 153 ERA, 276 strikeouts. I mean, just remarkable at the age he was. And he had a lot of poise and a lot of pressure. I mean, what I got to tell you, it was a big help to me back then. The late Mel Stoudemire was really Doc's pitching coach with Mets and Yankees and his second father. He taught me how to handle the media. We did something with the Dodgers did with Valenzuela. We tried to limit his media stuff to one appearance a week to kind of take some of the pressure off. Mel was always there guiding me what to do as a resource. And that's one of the unfortunate things about his day. You know, Mel's not going to be there, and his parents, Dwight and Ella Gooden, won't be there. That's a couple of people. And Davey Johnson, unfortunately, is not going to travel because he broke his hip a couple of months ago, and he can't get on a plane. But he was just remarkable. The poise at the age is the thing I just remember most, how young he was.
It was unlike anything we'd ever seen before. And of course, when Darryl and Doc were really so prominent superstars in New York in that major media market, and that '85 team, '84 team, '85 team, '86 team, it was just magic. It was a magical era for the Mets. And as a PR guy, as the head of media relations, you saw the struggles when they were building that team. How was that to you? How special was it to you when the team came into its own with Davey and the young kids, and then that magical '86 season?
Yeah, I remember guys sitting and the team hated it. They initially hated us at the time because we got like 6 fights that year. Anytime somebody threw at us, somebody was at the mound. Mike Tyson came and visited us that year because he saw all the fights we went to. He came in, posted a picture with Doc and Darryl. So I remember Game 6 of the World Series. we're losing 5-3, down 3 games to 2. I'm sitting in Davy's office with Keith and Darryl Johnson, one of our coaches, and I'm just trying to figure out how am I going to explain to the press how a team who won 114 games doesn't win the World Series, and all of a sudden, Gary gets a hit, Mitchell gets hit, Ray Knight gets hit, Mookie's at bat. Next day we rally, win. It's remarkable. I mean, that team is really close to me because they, I was just out of college. I was younger then, not like an old guy now, and they were nice enough to vote me a full share, which is unheard of. What they did, and so we just this special bond with us all going through that year. What we did, it was really a good thing to be a part of.
I'm sure it was. I was there during the World Series. I was there at
Can I
every
tell you a
playoff
quick Terry
game.
story?
I was going to ask you about your relationship with Terry, so go right ahead.
I got 2 stories, Terry. So
Okay.
one is the one thing I admire most about what he did. When Terry took over the team in 2010, right, Terry?
11, I think, yeah.
11. We were not a very good team. We were not a good team. Moved into a new state. And one thing which he did, the little thing I still remember today, is that we did the press conferences. He knew the first names of the reporters. And the guy has to go, well, Bob, and that made so much to these guys. And, it's a little thing. When you listen to the interviews on TV, how many players or coaches know the name of the guy they're speaking to? Very few. And little things that mean a lot, especially in this market. And the other thing he used to do, we used to have these, these press conference sessions. And after the thing, but Terry was such a good talker. Hey, can I get 10 minutes with Terry? And the one-on-ones were so important. And especially at a time when our team wasn't good, to cultivate the relationships. In a lot of ways, Terry handled the press. The extra time he gave was, to me, was a lot of times not appreciated by the people in our front office. But, after a 20-minute press conference, it's 10 minutes to the New York Times, 10 minutes to the Daily News, 10 minutes to the Record. But the way he handled the media was really tremendous. It saved us a lot of bad press, till we got good again in 15. And that's the kind of guy he was. He always had a story to tell, not the same story. The other story I got to tell is after, when Johan pitched no-hitter in 12, poor Terry almost had a heart attack. The pitch count in the 9th inning, was 131, 132, 133. So after the game was over, we used to walk to the press conference room and, hey, what to expect, and he was, almost apoplectic. I mean, he was so drained because he knew the history. We had Seaver, Gooden, David Cohn, no hitters. This is the first one. He left him in there, but he was so drained during that walk and going at the end of that game, going through. And unfortunately, after the game, after that, Johan pitched. I think it was a shutout after that, but the arm falls, can't caught up with him. But Johan had no second regrets about what Terry did. He wanted to do it, and Terry respected his wishes to do it. So that's one of my. I got 2 more guys. Let me forget. That's what I got for it.
Well, John, I'm going to tell you, when I got to New York, Jay had a put together a booklet where we sat down, and in the booklet was a picture and a description about all the sports writers, all the TV people that deal with the Mets. And we sat there, and he ran down. He said, hey, here's a little something background on this guy. Here's a background on this guy. And he said, you got to get to know these guys. So all of what he's saying, it came from him. I mean,
Well, but you implemented, though, Terry. You implemented.
Yeah, well, I mean, you had to figure out a way. And that's one of the things, obviously, after I've left managing the Mets, I've tried to instill in the guys who came behind me is that those times, those 2 or 3 minutes after the press conference, you've got to be able to budget your time. I know you want to get out on the field,
especially in this market, Terry.
I'm sorry, Jay.
In this market, especially in the New York market.
Especially in the New York market. But those guys, they want that 2 minutes or 3 minutes that they want. They have their own. They're writing their own story. They're writing their own slant to something. And you have to respect their job. You have to respect what they go through. They have bosses. They've got editors that they've got to report to. And so I try to tell every manager, listen, you've got to learn how to budget that 15, 20 minutes after that press conference, because you're going to get hammered by 3 or 4 guys off to the side. They all want their own 2 minutes. And it all came from Jay telling me, listen, you're going to have to learn how to deal with this stuff. And so, you know, you sit down, there were certain nights where you actually sat down. I would sit down and say, okay, and this was one of the things he did. He had a feel because he was in the press box. So he had a sense of the pulse of the media, what they were going to talk about, the questions they were asked. So I would walk in the press conference when that game was over, having a great idea what questions I was going to ask. So I could almost prepare some answers before I even got in there. And that's the value of having a guy like Jay, you know, having your back in New York.
And you know, New York is swamped with stuff. So I mean, you know, so Terry would do 162 press conferences times two for a season, plus like 35 or 36 spring training games times two. So, and the years we got to the postseason, it was more. So it's you know, New York is a special place to play and to manage, guys.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up, you were talking about how all these press conferences and you sitting in the press box getting a pulse of what the beat writers and the reporters are thinking. Um, there was a crazy week in July 2015, as everybody knows.
Yes, sir. Yes,
There
sir.
was one night where there was a shortstop named Wilmer Flores who's
Right.
out there on the field, and there's Twitter, and there's a report that he was traded to Milwaukee for Carlos Gomez. I want to get both of your perspectives of that night. Jay, from you sitting in that press box when this is going on, they're talking about it on TV. Terry's in the dugout. He doesn't know what's going on. So kind of relive that night with us on both of your perspectives.
I called Sandy Alderson, who was the GM at the time, and he says, we don't have a trade at the time. I'll let you know if we do. But Sandy, the whole free world is reporting we traded to Milwaukee for Carlos Gomez. I know, but it's not the case. Then I think it's towards the latter part of the game, it came out that I forgot who plugged it. Was it one of our other guys who failed the physical? Was it Gomez? I don't remember, Terry.
Yeah, it was Gomez.
Who flared the physicals. Who was it,
It was
Terry?
Gomez that had a bad physical report. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think right before Terry spoke, Sandy addressed the media and said, we have no trade. And I remember I went to Wilmer, who cried during the game. He was crying on the air, and Terry wasn't getting, we have no trade. And I went to Wilmer. I said, Wilmer, what do you want to do? And Wilmer was one of those guys, listen, he never ran away. He said, let's talk about it. So that day, that endeared him to Mets fans for eternity. What followed, which you couldn't write a story about what the next 3 days, what happened after that. Lily, I'll let you go. Terry.
Yeah, well, you know, I've talked about it, and this. So I'm on the bench, and I can hear some fans. Wilmer was coming up to bat, and so he was going to the on deck circle, and I heard some fans yelling at him, "Good luck, Wilmer! You know, thanks for everything. We'll miss you." And I'm thinking, what's going on here? Well, then David Wright, who was off that night, comes up to me in the dugout, and he said, "Hey, Terry, he's been traded." I said, "Who?" He said, "Wilmer." I said, "No, he hasn't." He said, "I'm telling you, it's all over TV. They're announcing that he's been traded." I said, "David, this guy has not been traded." He said, "I'm telling you, it's all over everybody. And the fans are now screaming at him and cheering for him." And I said, "David, this guy has not been traded." He said, "Terry, I'm just telling you, it's being reported." So I turned and I said, "David, you see that phone right behind me?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "That phone goes to Sandy Alderson. And if Wilmer Flores was traded, that phone would be ringing because I've got to take him out of the game because he doesn't even belong to us anymore." So I said, if that phone's not ringing, he's got to play because I was, you know, back then with Dave, that might have been a time when Dave was a little banged up. And so, you know, he needed the night off. I didn't have any more infielders. So he goes on the field and guys on the bench are saying, "My God, he's crying." So he comes off the field between innings and I grabbed him and I said, "Listen, you're not going anywhere. You're a Met. You've got to pull yourself together. I need you right now. I need you to go up there." And okay. I said, "Wilmer, if you were traded, I would be told of it because you wouldn't be in the game right now. So if you're okay, got to go back out there." Well, he goes back out the next inning, and when he steps out of the dugout, the fans went crazy. And to where now he's out there. Now the phone rings, and it's Sandy, and he says, "You got to get him out of the game." I said, "Has he been traded?" He goes, "No, but he's crying on the field." I said, "I can't, what do you want me to do? I'm out of infielders." And so then when the game was over, of course, the press conference that I'm sure you've seen, John and Jay, of course, was at, you know, they were asking me about being traded. I said, For what? For who? I don't know if this guy hasn't been traded. And so it was a crazy night, but the fact that 2 days later he hit that home run, you could not, if you were a movie writer, you couldn't have put down a better script than what we saw that in those 3 days.
Remember when he came across our plate and put his hand on his chest?
Yeah.
I'm a man.
He was pulling on his jersey. It was amazing.
Yeah.
It was one of the most emotional games I've ever seen, and
I think
what a
he got a
great way.
single in his first at bat too. I think he drove it a run his first at bat that night too.
Yeah. But it was just a tremendous, and John, as we get into this, I want to get Wilmer on the show when he gets over by the East Coast. I don't want to bother him early in the morning, but he's a special kid, and everybody's so excited that he's still doing well, and he can always hit. That was the one thing we knew, that he could really swing that bat. So I can't wait to have him on the show and hear his perspective of it all. That'll be something to hear.
I think so. I mean, he's endeared himself to Met fans for life because of what he was, because of 15 years old, being signed, and just being a part of that 2015 team and what happened to him, and then hitting the game-winning home run. What a great story. But I want to circle. Great kid. But Jay, I mean, and I'll turn it over to Terry after. But I have a question. There's a lot of stories about you out there, and they're all wonderful. True. They're not true. I mean, there's so many, but I want to go back because on every April 1st, there's a story about a mythical pitcher named Sid Finch. Share with us the story about what could be the most famous April Fool's joke in the history of baseball.
I think it's the best sports prank ever, and you never can do it this day and age of Twitter. So it was, again, we're right before spring training in St. Petersburg. Frank Cashen called me to his office and said, I got a call from George Plimpton and Mark Mulvoy at Sports Illustrated. They had this idea of an April Fool's joke that the Mets would sign this mythical pitcher who played a flute, came this faraway country over the whatever, Yugoslavia or something. 6'7" guy with 160-mile-an-hour fastball. Are you up for it? I said, guys, this is how I made my living in Fairleigh Dickinson for 8 years with all this BS stuff. So April 1st, 1985, story comes out. The first opening paragraph of the story of the paragraph, this is an April Fool's joke. Nobody picked up on it. So the whole baseball world was askance. I got a call from the sports editor of one of the New York papers. I don't want to give his name out. How the hell could you give this story to Sports Illustrated? We cover you guys on a daily basis. And, well, they just got it. Jim Fry, who was our hitting coach at the time, went to the Cubs. I never heard of this guy. Who is he? Jim, I get you to do your homework. That day, we again go back to Mel Stoudemire. We used to train at the old Huggins Tango Field under a tent. We held a press conference with Ron Reynolds, one of our catchers. We burnt a hole in his glove and said this was Sid's 130-mile-an-hour curveball. And Mel played, the guys were tuned. We kept it going for a day or two, and finally we found out, and we retired Sid at the end of spring training in Allied Field. We had a retirement ceremony. But you couldn't do this with the age of Twitter. It was great. It was, and people never picked up on it, that the opening paragraph in Sports Illustrated gave it away. This is an April Fool's joke. Nobody ever got that part of it. It was fun. It was great. It was great fun.
John, part of that whole story, because I was in another organization. Of course, we get wind of this guy that is throwing 125 miles an hour, and they only have him throw sides behind you have blankets or something, so nobody can see this guy. No, they don't want him out there yet. And guys in other teams were buying into it. They're saying, what the, because the Mets always had this tremendous reputation to find great pitching. And everybody said, I got to see this guy.
He played the flute.
He played the flute.
Yeah. He was a high school teacher. He was a big gawky guy, a 6'7" guy. He dressed right between Strawberry and George Foster.
Oh, no.
But that was great fun. Great fun.
John, this is why, one of the things that Jay brought to the clubhouse, which he always did, was his humor, his desire to have fun, to enjoy what he did, because it's a tremendously stress-related job, dealing with all the writers and the owners and everybody else who's calling him. I mean, he's got the video of him doing the Harlem Shuffle. I mean, is a classic. You know, we had a room full, all the guys were dressed up, and there's Jay, and now he's got to tell you the story because he's supposed to have a bad leg and isn't supposed to be out there dancing.
That cost me money, guys. So what happened was the year before, I fell coming out of a hotel by the stadium, and I fractured my ankle. And I was suing the hotel for negligence because it was a pothole. So then I guess the Harlem Shuffle was the key thing at that time. So I was asked to perform in front of the team. I did such a good job. The video got a lot of hits. And my lawyer called, said, I love the video, but you cost yourself a couple $1,000 because the people didn't know you can walk now. So we had some fun, and it cost me money.
Oh, Jay. I heard once that that you almost gave Steven Matz a heart attack or something. There was something about sleeping in the office.
Well, what happened was I'm not a good driver, and after a late night game, I used to sleep in the clubhouse. So I had my shirt on, and I slept in one of the couches. And Steven had come in the next morning to throw, and I had just gotten up with my shirt on time, my underwear showing, my glasses unhinged, and he was screaming. He said, "What's that?" So I gave the young man a little bit of a heart attack. Hey, can I get to one more Terry story before I forget?
Yes. Yeah.
Our Game 5 in the World Series, Kansas City. After 8 innings, we're beating the Royals 2-0. Crowd's going crazy. Looking forward to Game 6 and 7 when we got Syndergaard, DeGrom, Syndergaard. We're gonna get which order to pitch. We're gonna take Matt out of the game. Matt says, "I really want to pitch. I can do it." So it didn't work out the way we wanted to, but to this day, I mean, Terry never backed off his decision. He felt that Matt deserved it. Two major surgery before he came back and pitched. He wasn't supposed to pitch at all the latter part of the year. He pitched our clinching game in Cincinnati. He really busted his ass to get us through the postseason. You know, beat Chicago, beat the Dodgers, and to this day, getting some flack. But to his man, Terry believed the guy deserved a chance to finish the game. Didn't work out, but Terry didn't back off his principles.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, what a night that was. I mean, just what emotion that was as well. You guys must have such incredible stories, but you know, there's always the funny ones, the pranks. Why don't you share some of the favorite pranks that may have been pulled during the Terry Collins era, Jay? And Terry, please feel free to talk about some of your favorite memories.
well, you know, I will tell you, John, before he gets into it, you know, in earlier years, he was around some guys that were real pranksters. And I'll let him explain them to you, because some of these guys today, I mean, there was not a day go by that this guy didn't have to look over his shoulder to see what the next prank is going to be. So go ahead, Jay, and tell us what.
See, I don't know if it's a prank, but I never considered myself a suit. You know, I was usually, you know, like Jacob DeGrom. Like I had a pretty good relationship with Jacob. You know, I'm 40 years older than him, so I used to Jacob. We did the meeting. It wasn't crazy about David. Jacob is a small kid from a small town in Florida. I still stay in touch with him to this day. Didn't like the attention. So during his first Cy Young year, when it was 9-6, we never got any support from him. I went to him. I said, Jacob, you know, to get people to vote for you, we got to get your story out. Either the innings pitched, the hits, the innings, whatever. And he said, listen, I'll do all the interview you want, but you got to do something for me. You got to do what I want you to do. So I said, we got to interview writer X. Said, okay, we have this basketball court in our locker room. You got to make 6 or 7 shots before I do the interview. So the whole team would be watching me. I never made any of the shots, but he wanted to do an interview. The next time he said, okay, I'll do the interview, but you have to go on the field and hit fungos to Steven Matz and myself. I couldn't even hit the ball. But the whole thing is, I would do things like this. I was always, you know, to laugh at myself. I was always come to do that, you know. And the younger guys like John Franco, I had a great relationship with. He taught David Wright what the right thing to do was. David Wright taught DeGrom what the right thing to do is. So the bottom line is, I would always let myself be part to these pranks or things which people would laugh at me. I never considered they were laughing at me and laughing with me. But getting along in the locker was a tough thing to do. The PR guys always got to ask the players, you got to do this, you do that. They got to know you're on their side, and I would do little things like that to let them know I was one of them. And it worked for 38 years,
Jay, I've always wanted to know, it was always amazing to me the patience you had when a game was over, and maybe it was a tough game and maybe it was a good game, but you knew who those writers wanted to talk to, and some of them didn't want to talk. And yet your patience, the way you delivered the message, they always end up talking. I mean,
because level of trust, Terry, goes down to not always going something from the locker. Could you do this, do this? They know if I would, I would always think if you hit a home run, is great. But if you make an error, my famous Tim Tuffle story in the '86 World Series, he made an error that cost us game one. He stood up in his locker for two hours explaining about the error. That's why people love Dwight to this day. It's off the field stuff, off the loss, he never ran. And I always try to instill in these guys, they have to trust, the PR guys got to have the trust of the players and the team. And once you lose that, you're a dead person. I just try to develop that layer of trust with the guys, what I did through the years. And they trusted me, once they, the PR guys got a tough job. The owners think that the PR guys partial to the players and the media. The media thinks they're partial to the media and the owner. Yeah, it's a circle. You have to, cater to all three, for lack of a better word.
Well, you did it better than anybody, my man. You did it better
Well,
than anybody.
I enjoyed it.
That's why every All-Star game, Jay Horwitz is at it, no matter, who was, whether there was one Met or five Mets there, you were at every All-Star game. The World Series games that we weren't a part of, you were there. So, the way you did your job certainly was recognized throughout baseball. And I just think you're a special person to be able to do it.
You're a special friend,
and our friendship, I can't thank you enough for everything you did for me. And
no,
we'll continue.
That's one thing I enjoyed about my job, meeting guys like you and having friends like you for life. Is that's what the whole job is about for me, the personal relationships.
Yeah, and Jay, you have a wonderful podcast yourself. I mean, this podcast that you do, I like you to explain it to everybody who may not have listened to it, because I listened. I mean, you have Jack Fisher on, Butch Husky. I mean, the legends from the past of Mets history that you get to talk to and keep these memories alive. Tell everybody about how that podcast started.
When I switched jobs in 2000. When I switched jobs in 2018, they wanted me to reconnect with our alumni family, because I work with most of these guys in the 60s, 70s. So I would call guys who I have a personal relationship, stories to tell. Turk Wendell, John Franco, Darryl Strawberry, Bobby V, Terry, Davey Johnson. It's just not about stats and stuff. And with Butch, we talked about we're number 42. With Jack, this is the 60th anniversary of the opening of Shea Stadium. He's going to be here April 17th, and we play the Pirates. The 60 years to the day that he opened Shea Stadium. He's going to throw out a first pitch at Citi Field, which is stuff. It's guys I have a relationship with, and this year I try to branch out a little bit to go off the beaten path. So I did a podcast with Phil Simms, with Joe Buck, with people like that, just people I'm comfortable talking to. It's not Wood did 14 home runs this year, just doing stuff that people are comfortable talking with me about. Like with Terry, we remember this about, the times we used to ride to the ballpark together every day, and that's what they did. When people, I joked about Terry leaving, but a PR guy's with the manager from really February till the year. You ride to the park, you eat dinners with him. When a guy loses his job and moves on, it's tough. It's part of your family leaving. So, when that's, people should understand that, losing a job in baseball is a different thing, because you're there so much at the ballpark. We used to leave like 11:30 on the road for a night game, go to the park, and eat lunch. Terry, so he used to see me riding a bike, trying to keep my fingers swelled. And after the game, we used to go home. So you're there like 12 hours. It's a long time to be with someone.
I tell you, Jay, I mean, we got an email that I got to read to you, and it's from a gentleman named David Levy. And when we announced that you were going to be appearing on the show, we got an email at the Terry Collins Show at gmail.com. So I had to share it with both you and Terry. This is not much of a question for Jay, but an observation from what I've seen at Mets fantasy camp. All the pro coaches at camp and all the active players that are there demonstrate such admiration and respect for Jay. It's a testament to the quality of the man he is. In addition, he's always so engaging with the campers when he's down there and always seems to recognize us at Citi Field with a wave and a hello. From a fan, thank you so very much, Jay. Mazel tov on your longevity with the Mets. May you only know health, happiness, joy, and continued success. And Terry, thank you for all you do as well. I love the podcast. Sincerely, David Levy. So I had to share that.
That's what it's all about for me, guys. That one letter captures everything. Just try and be nice to people and always have a kind word. Answer all your emails, answer all your calls, answer all your texts. That's what I'm about.
Well, you've done it. And I again, from the bottom of my heart, thanks so much for being on the show and being my friend. We got a lot more fun ahead of us here coming up pretty soon.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's always a pleasure, guys. And thanks for having me, man.
Thank you, Jay. We appreciate it.
All right. Well, take care, guys. Thanks, Jay. I'll
Jay.
speak to you soon. Speak to you soon.
Just as advertised, Jay Horwitz, great stories. What a great relationship both of you have had. The friendship is evident. Thank you for bringing him on.
You know what, John, when I was going to do this, I said, I've got to have Jay Horwitz on. And he's got so many stories to tell. I mean, he didn't tell you about some of the pranks that guys used to pull on him. They used to hide in his closet in his room and scare him at night. And, he'd fall asleep on the plane. They'd cut his ties off. I mean, they did all sorts of stuff to him. And you know what? They loved him. These guys would do anything for him. And you heard what kind of a person he is. So I was really, really thrilled that he'd want to be on the show.
Well, it's amazing to have him on there. What great stories. And I think you got somebody lined up for the next episode. Do you want to share it with everybody that's listening and watching?
I do. I'm very, very excited. This guy, I got to meet him when I took over as the minor league director. The field coordinator with the Mets when I first joined them. R.A. Dickey got sent down. He was one of the first guys that got sent out of major league camp. And he came to minor league camp, and we had a rule in the minor leagues that you couldn't have facial hair. And R.A. said, well, I said, look, you got to shave. And he said, my kids have never seen me shaving. And made it a game with his kids and made it fun for them. And so when I decided to do this podcast, I said, there's one guy I got to have on. And, of all the several people I want on, here's one guy who, without a question, had one of the greatest years I've ever witnessed. With this funky pitch that he developed himself. He dominated some great lineups. The year that R.A. Dickey had when he won the Cy Young, truly one of the great years of anybody that's ever pitched. And he's a special human being. I read his book, stirring book. So I'm excited to have R.A. on next week.
Well, we certainly look forward to that. It's going to be great to bring on R.A. Dickey on the next edition of the Terry Collins Show. Don't forget to follow Terry on social media. Go to @TerryCollins_10 on both X, which is formerly Twitter, and Instagram. There's a Facebook page now that we've started for the Terry Collins Show, so look for it there. Terry, your social media is blowing up. I mean, we put up a little clip of you talking about Noah Syndergaard and, what was that? Why didn't you hit him? If you want to leave a bruise. And it has been seen now on Instagram in the last 48 hours by over 20,000 people. 20,000 people have played that video. They're sharing it. So if you want to see these little clips, you go to the YouTube channel, you can go to Instagram, you go to Twitter. people are loving the interaction and they're loving your stories. So don't forget to follow Terry on all those social media platforms. You'll be very well entertained, and it'll be a way for you to follow what's going on with the show. So, Terry, it's great as always to be with you. And until next week, when we have another show, this is John Arezzi for the Terry Collins Show. Let's go Mets.